What's the smallest amount of power you've seen someone drunk on? The woman in the office that was in charge of the coffee fund. She had a list of rules for using the coffee machine. One was you couldn't brew any after 1 p.m., even though we had a few people that liked coffee in the afternoon. Then she didn't buy coffee with the fund because people weren't following the rules. So someone else just bought coffee and brought it in. She didn't like that either. I think eventually the people she clashed with just brought in a new machine and did their own coffee fund. That woman was crazy. Wow, so you've actually got competing businesses within your own business because you can't work together. I once helped with first aid at a half marathon, and one guy had a single job to do. He had to stand at the bottom of the road and direct the runners down one of two roads. Since there were barriers across the road, it was a no-brainer and impossible to screw up in any way, shape, or form. He decided that, despite the road being closed to traffic, and contrary to the very simple instructions he was given, the runners must run on the pavement. Because cars equals road, therefore on foot equals pavement. He screamed at them and forced hundreds of people to squeeze along the pavement, even chasing after one who put a foot on the road yelling at them. People were tripping each other up in the small space, and when I got a couple of first aid patients, I called around to see if I could get someone to stop him because he was drunk on absolutely zero power. Eventually someone shifted him and left no replacement. Not even a direction sign, and it all ran smoother than when he was there. Nobody took the wrong road, showing that he was less effective than empty space. Yeah, if you are, as an employee, not only not improving the situation, but you are actually making it worse, I wouldn't put that job on a resume. Sadly, me as a 4th grade volunteer crosswalk guard, I would literally make the kids wait until there was a car I could stop. I really thought I had legal authority when I put that vest on. Well, yeah, what's the point of using the crosswalk if you don't actually get to stop people from driving? When my cat learned how to close doors, she started trapping the other cat in the bathroom by luring him in and pulling the door closed from underneath. She also pushes doors closed on me. I'm not sure if you could call it drunk, but she is very clearly pleased with herself when she does this. Yeah, cats can be pretty devious. Mine, on the other hand, doesn't really like closing doors. In fact, she is very anti-closed door. If there are any doors closed, she will whine until they are open because she needs to have full access to every room in the house. A woman created a group on Facebook for one of my hobbies for organizing meetups and stuff like that. She shared it around on other groups, and naturally hundreds of others joined. Things only went downhill after that. Nobody was allowed to post except her. Seemingly every comment, mostly related to meetup details, would set her off and cause her to lash out or ban a member completely. I got banned, but I can't remember the exact details. I think I responded to the post like, "I can't make it, but everyone have fun," which prompted her to berate and guilt trip me. Eventually, she went off the deep end and deleted the entire group to punish everyone. Somebody else created a new group, which everyone joined, and is still going strong to this day. I wonder if we're gonna see any like Reddit or Discord moderators in this thread. Every gaming clan I've ever been in, the really fun ones were when a ladder would be unable to make it to the night's festivities and would temporarily mod someone else. Almost every time, instant powermonger. The next day, "What the heck did you do?" and removal, like they forgot it was temporary. You know, I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and I would always avoid being in guilds. I know it's supposed to be a social game, but when guilds actually wanted you to fill out an application, and they would have to, like, review you and interview you to be able to join, that's kind of when I was like, no thanks. Years ago, while driving the US Gulf Coast from Texas to Florida, I was passing through Pensacola, Florida, when I became confused about which turn I needed to take. I pulled just off the highway onto the edge of a massive empty parking lot and pulled out my large map. The nearest building was nearly a quarter of a mile away, and I was just on the edge of this gigantic, unfenced parking lot. A rent-a-cop drove all the way from the building in a golf cart, got out and shouted at me, "No parking! This is a private lot! You can't park here!" I'm sitting in the car with California tags, the engine running, and a map spread out on my lap, and this idiot is telling me I can't park there. He looked like Eric Cartman, demanded that everyone respect my authority. I ignored him until I found the road I wanted and drove off. I mean, it kind of reminds me of my job as being nighttime security, where I would just look at cameras and I actually had a microphone I could yell at people, but I would usually never make a big deal about it unless they were, like, really looking suspicious. This one woman almost everyone hated was also the newest and lowest level employee at a place I used to work. When we got another employee that had literally the same job, the woman everyone hated took it upon herself to boss the new employee around. Out of 25 employees, I was number 3, and I finally pulled the very new woman aside and told her she didn't have to take that crap and she was doing fine. You know, this kind of sounds like schoolyard bullying. It's like when you're the new kid, everyone picks on you, but as soon as another new kid moves in, then alright, you're part of the group and now everyone gets to pick on them. When I was in my late teens, I got a job at the arcade inside my local mall. At first, I was so stoked because I was an avid arcade junkie, and I thought it would end up being the most awesome place to work. Sadly, it was absolute misery due to the horrible human being that was the store manager. This woman was so absolutely bitter with her life that she made up for it by making life miserable for the young people who worked there. She was mean, cranky, condescending, and would do anything to make sure you understood it was her way or the highway. She'd worked for the arcade company for over 15 years, and I guess that is all she had. One of the things she did was assign every worker a set of chores, which she called her little chore list, as if we were her kids. The chores often consisted of busy work, usually things that didn't need to be done but would take up the entire shift so that you couldn't ever just chill if it got slow. Her philosophy was, if you're on the clock you have to be working, even if the work is pointless. The straw that broke the camel's back with me was when one of my chores on the chore list was cleaning up the very top of the 15-foot glass windows. I remember asking her why she felt I should get on a ladder and risk falling just to clean windows that literally never get dirty, because nobody is tall enough to reach that height. She assured me it was dirty, and she would know if I didn't do the chore. She always accused us of not doing the chores she'd assigned, or half-assing them. It was absolute insanity. We did all of our crap pretty much without fail. Anyway, that night I pulled the 15-foot ladder out of the storage room and started cleaning the very top of those windows. When I got to the very back corner of the store, there were 2 sets of small handprints planted up there. This crazy psycho had taken the ladder out at some point during the day and literally climbed up 15 feet to leave handprints so that she could 100% confirm if the windows had been cleaned. I could not believe that level of power hunger pettiness. I called her out on it over the phone immediately. At first she tried to deny it, and then she said, "Well, I guess you actually do all your chores after all," and gave me a snark little chuckle over the phone. To which I replied, "Well, I guess I'm just gonna quit then. Have a nice life." And I just left. There was nobody at the store but me, so I'm sure she had to leave whatever she was doing and come to close that night. I remember going to that arcade a few years later and she was still there. Yeah, it does really suck when you get into what should be an awesome job, but it just gets completely ruined by the people you're working with. I've had that quite a few times. But it is kind of funny when you do leave working somewhere, but then you just get to come back and visit because it's a public place, and you're like, oh, hey, you guys are all still here, huh? I'm sorry. Social media influencers. Hey, is that a personal attack? No, I think it's referring to the people that just like have such a large following and they feel super entitled, and they think they just deserve everything because they see themselves as a big celebrity. Discord moderators can get pretty extreme. Hey, there it is, I called it. I'm a video engineer at a TV station. One of our producers got her husband hired as my assistant. He was menacing. He would barge into my office and try to catch me doing something wrong. Kept telling me he was going to take my job. He was previously unemployed for years. I had a degree and 10 years at the station. He was so confident that he was going to take my job. The last straw was him screaming at me in the hall. He didn't last 2 weeks. His wife was mortified. Yeah, I don't really get the logic of people who go into a job saying, I'm so good at this, I'm going to be your boss at one point. It's like, you're kind of already putting yourself in hot water early there. People who yell at and make ridiculous demands of restaurant servers because they know the servers can't yell back and are dependent on tips. Yeah, I have seen quite a few times where I see a server getting chewed out and I'm like, you're really just going to take that? I once taught English in an international school in Egypt. The school was run by an army general in the Egyptian government and was pretty poorly mismanaged. The guy who was there was responsible for some general maintenance around the school, but happened to have his office in the same room as the copy machine. Every day, teachers would bring their papers to his room to copy them for class, and every day the man would tell us to leave it on his desk, where there'd be a pile of teacher copies needing to be made. He wanted to make the copies himself. It was not technically his job, but the machine was in his office, and by forcing the people to copy through him, he seemed to keep some level of necessary status at the school. Copies would always be late, sometimes not being available until the next day, just dependent on how the dude felt at the moment. Well, hey, if you remove everybody's ability to defend for themselves and you force them to all be dependent on you, then you can feel more important and feel like everybody likes you. When my husband and I were getting married, we had to go to the city hall to submit the legal paperwork. We were living in a country where we were both conversational speakers in the language. The secretary of the office we had to meet asked me what my marital status was. I explained I've never been married. She repeated the question. I translated single from English. She continued to be displeased and repeated the question. I explained to her that if there was a specific word to describe a single female in this language, I didn't know it, citing that it's not our first language. We went in circles like this for at least 3 minutes. She berated us, saying that we shouldn't be getting married in that country if we didn't know the right words. Eventually she told me the word I should have been using. She turned to my husband and asked his marital status. He used the masculine form of the word she just told me to use. It was not the correct word. She just shook her head, corrected him, and stamped our documents. We went in to see the official, who looked over the paperwork we had just filled out, signed it, and sent us on our way without any further issues. Man, this is the same kind of pettiness as all those teachers when you say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" and they say, "I don't know, can you?" Because it's like, they know what you're saying, but they're basically just being grammar police and want to pick on you. The fat, greasy gamer chud that gets promoted to assistant manager of a GameStop. No joke, I had a GameStop store I frequented for years, and the only person that worked there that I hated was this obnoxious walking stereotype. When the PS4 Pro came out, I went to trade in my regular PS4 with a controller. It worked perfectly and had some minor wear. This living, gasping crap stain proceeded to try and screw me on my trade-in, and say that I can't have the controller that comes with the Pro because mine is damaged. And he needs a controller with the system trade-in, so he was gonna open the Pro I was buying to keep the controller. I flipped out on this disgusting guy. He canceled my sale and banned me from the store, and said he could because he was the manager on duty. I called the corporate number to complain, and I was later informed that he had literally been promoted that day, and I was the third complaint call they'd gotten about him in about a 4-hour span. Needless to say, he was fired almost instantly. It's kinda sad when the gross guy that works at the game store has to flex like that, because people like him clearly have no control in any other aspects of their lives. I don't know, from the stories I've heard from GameStop, I'm almost surprised that he didn't get promoted again for trying to rip people off. The water fountain monitor in elementary school. You know, whenever you hear about a job title, that you're like, what is the actual point of that job? Like, any amount of authority you think you gain from that is too much. Some security guard for the McDonald's inside of a Walmart. He told us we were in his world now and that we have no power here. Okay, what does that even mean? What sort of power is he even referring to? A couple of years ago, I worked in a warehouse as a Lyft driver. The job sucked, but I worked alone, at my own pace, and got to listen to music while making $12 an hour. There was this woman around my age named Jessie who was a complete bee to everyone in my department. Her role was to pick items from shelves to fulfill orders. She would try to boss people around, especially newer people since they didn't know she had zero authority. It was tough to watch, and I was always pulling people aside to tell them not to listen to her. Our paths never really crossed, but when they did, we didn't get along. One day our boss had an emergency and had to dip out for a few hours because his kid had an accident and needed stitches. On his way out, he told the first person he saw that they were in charge, and just to let people do their thing. That person was Jessie. Instantly, it felt like Thanos getting the final Mind Stone. There instantly was a chill in the air. Babes began to cry, wildlife fleeing into the horizon. I knew it was going to be a rough night. Jessie immediately starts pulling people away from their jobs to do random, stupid bullcrap. People who picked items were now suddenly sweeping aisles, despite lifts coming in and out of them. Within an hour, all synergy was out the window. I couldn't help but laugh as I watched from afar. Suddenly, her gaze reached upon me. I looked across the warehouse and saw her rapidly approaching me. I sighed, lowered my lift, and prepared to be kind but stern. She gets right up to me and asks, "What are you working on?" As if I don't do the same crap every day, 5 days a week, for the past year and a half of being there. She didn't like my answer, and states how far behind we are with orders for the night. "Yeah, no crap, dude, you pulled everyone from their normal jobs for no reason." She tells me to get off my lift and start picking orders. I tell her I only pick orders once my work is done, and I still have crap to do that if I don't get done, will screw third shift over. She starts saying something and I just take off. She has a freaking meltdown. She screams at me as I'm 30 feet in my lift, laughing. She storms off and calls my boss, who's in the hospital with his son, to tattle that I'm not doing my job. I don't know what was said, but she starts crying, hangs up the phone, and goes home. The rest of the night, everyone did their normal jobs. We got everything done, and the team morale was high due to everyone bonding over their hatred for Jessie. The next day, she was sent to another department. You know, if I ever got dropped into like a manager position, just like thrown into a new company that I'd never been in, the first thing I would do is just go to every employee and just ask them, okay, show me what you do, show me what your job is like. I just want to understand how everything works so that you can kind of get a better understanding of, you know, how to delegate things. I wouldn't go to every person and be like, all right, everyone who's doing a job, switch places. Everyone start just doing a job you don't know how to do. 0. I worked in an office, and one of my coworkers was married to someone in HR. He was a bit of a tool and had only been with the company a few months. I had just been promoted and went back to my old area where a colleague and I were talking about how stupid some new company policy was. Think Michael Scott asking for TPS reports. The dude walks over to my friend's cubicle where we were and says, "Don't talk about that." I said, "Okay, whatever you say," and kept talking about it. After a couple of rounds of, "I'm serious," he bursts out with, "Hey, I'm gonna write you up if you don't stop talking about the Michael Scott's TPS reports requirement." I stopped mid-sentence, mildly confused for a moment, until I realized that 1. I don't work in that department. 2. Even if I did, I don't work for him. And 3. Nobody worked for him. I walked over to his desk and told him I was ready to be written up, and that I hoped this wouldn't affect my career prospects at the company, or his. I said, "Should we walk over to HR together and talk to your wife about our respective roles and job responsibilities with this company?" He never tried to play boss again. Whew, well, it really doesn't take much for some people to really feel self-righteous enough to try and push their beliefs onto other people. Anyways, that's all for today, so I'll see you again tomorrow.